I believe everybody knows this song, so I hope that you will sing along with me. It's a wonderful world. I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, tell me what you're thinking. What a wonderful world. I see skies of blue, clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the bright blessed day, and the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, tell me what you're thinking. What a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, the colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? Saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear hang on. I hear babies cry. I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, tell me what you're thinking. What a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. And as we prepare for Rev Todd, can I get an oh yeah?
I was not expecting that, and that was quite an emotional moment for me. We had a long-term congregant in Greensboro, and I've mentioned Dr. Victor Tynes before, and he would always sing that song. He lived to be over 100 years old, but he was one of the founders of that church, and that was beautiful. Thank you, Deidrey, and thanks for all of you for joining in with that. Last week we started a new series called The Practice of Becoming. And we did the welcome as a practice. And this week we're doing the practice of becoming and wonder as a practice. Wonder. As I listened this week and I contemplated wonder in my own life, one of the images that came to my mind was the Grand Canyon. In 1999, I started on January 1st. I did a cross-country trip from Montgomery to San Francisco. My friend Shelly was moving to San Francisco, and we drove across the country, and we stopped, and we spent an entire day at the Grand Canyon because you hear that it's pretty spectacular, right? But that just doesn't really describe what you experience and what you see. And just the layers of colors and how the colors change as the sun moves across the sky. And we actually were there long enough to watch the sunset. And there was this just unbelievable experience of awe. And so I've been sitting and thinking about that. And so when I told Kath what we were talking about, and I said images of anything that inspires like this sense of wonder and awe. And so, most people, when they stand in front of something like the Taj Mahal, I had that same experience when I stood in front of the Basilica of the Sacred Heart in Paris. It's just this overwhelming experience that there is something so much greater than us. And I then, this morning I walked outside for a few minutes and I carried in this beautiful collection of what someone said, "Oh, weeds." But they are weeds. They are, well, but you know what? A weed is only that which is growing where you don't want it to grow. That's all a weed is. These were once beautiful flowers. And there are millions upon millions upon millions of more flowers right here. How awesome is that? I mean, yeah, they're weeds, but they're also joyful, right? We just read about joy. Do you remember these from when you were a kid? Y'all remember these? And we used to do this. Did y'all do this? Oh wait, can I still do it? I might be too old. Did y'all do that as a kid? And then you would delight in laughter. When is the last time you looked at something and really noticed something ordinary like you had never seen it before? I think that we often lose wonder not because we have explained the world, but maybe because we've stopped paying attention. Like maybe perhaps the opposite of wonder is inattention. So I started like contemplating and shaping this message around this idea that I've talked before, and even Patty picked up on it a couple weeks ago when I have said that like certainty. And we move from certainty into curiosity. And I believe that certainty demands an explanation. Curiosity seeks an understanding. But wonder allows the opportunity for transformation to happen in us. And I think wonder is so vital for having that experience of awe, of having that experience that there is something so much greater that I can't really just even explain. And I looked into our sacred words to say, okay, is there a place where this shows up? And and one of the first places it shows up for me is in the story of Exodus, where Moses is tending the sheep, right? Moses has already fled, and now he's gotten married, and he's tending sheep in a familiar wilderness. He is not seeking any kind of spectacular spiritual experience. He's just walking around tending to sheep, and suddenly an angel of the Lord, a divine idea, shows up as a flame in a bush. A bush that is burning yet not being consumed by the fire. And the miraculous moment in this story is not that the bush is burning, not that the divine is present. It's that Moses stops and looks. How often do we miss the mystical, the divine presence of our lives because we don't bother to pay attention, that we don't bother to just stop and see with eyes of wonder that have not, like, not paying attention in the world. Right? And it's only after that Moses turns that this encounter becomes personal. When we're ready to pause and to see the mundane with fresh eyes, with an intention of noticing the presence of God in every moment, God calls the name of Moses. God will call your name to be present. And in that moment, God says, slip off your sandals, for this is holy ground. The presence of God is not what made the ground holy. The awareness and the presence that Moses brought to the encounter, to be present with the divine that was always here, that is always there, with the divine ideas that are always present in our lives, that's what makes ground holy. And yet there is the mystery of the burning bush. There is always that encounter with mystery. And when we keep a practice of wonder, that shows up for us. The holy is everywhere. But encounter happens when we turn and we bring our attention to the presence. Now, what I notice in this story of Exodus is that it tells us that God has seen the suffering of his people, that he has heard the cries of his people. And in response to this, because someone is willing to stop and turn and be present, that God sends Moses. He says, go and do this. And of course, Moses, like some of us, goes, who, me? Who am I to do this? Encountering life with a practice of wonder becomes our vocation. When we don't live with wonder as a spiritual practice, we sometimes practice spiritual tourism. That's akin to just praying on Sundays, where it's a hobby and not a practice. Now, this is a teaching from our Hebrew scriptures. And of course, we mention every week that we're looking at and we're saying, okay, so how does our way shower look at this? How do other great spiritual masters look at this? And right, and Jesus tells us in Matthew, he says, well, now, look at the birds. Consider the lilies, right? It's not just that the birds are taken care of and that the flowers are taken care of, that the weeds are taken care of. He says, look. Pause and turn and look. Pay attention to the wonder of this moment. Pay attention to the wonder of this encounter with our Father who art in heaven. And if this divine life source cares so much about that weed and about that bird and even about this seashell, then how much does that presence of divine life care about you? Every single one of us. And in his teachings, Jesus repeatedly turns and he talks about seeds and soil and yeast and bread and lamps and children. He talks about our meals. And he is always inviting us into ordinary encounters to behold the experience of God. And yet sometimes we just don't pay attention. Or we are certain, like we've decided, that we understand science now, so we know how all this works, and so we don't have to wonder about it. Anybody like that? Somebody that is so analytical, right? That they know, they're certain. And then hopefully maybe some curiosity creeps in to seek some understanding. But still, this is what has come to me, is that in our full experience of being human, that we have certainty and that we have curiosity. It is not until we step into wonder that we start to embody the fact that we are divine expressions. And so we have to pay attention. And the unity tradition, everything that Jesus teaches is about our consciousness. It is about retraining our consciousness. And Jesus is training our perception, because the extraordinary is disclosed through the commonplace in every moment. Right? And this is where I truly believe that what we do in unity is, it's formational. Because Jesus does not tell us what to believe. Again and again, he teaches us how to look at the world, at ourselves, at our judgments, to turn the other cheek, to stop and to turn. Last week I brought up Myrtle Fillmore and how I truly believe that Myrtle, she's like, yeah, you've got the metaphysics, you can learn all that intellectual stuff, but it's not enough until you put it into practice. And so she's about the doing of the work. And so, right, Myrtle, in How to Let God Help You, in the purpose of living, she begins by inviting us to release all the concerns of the world and to enter into silence. You don't have to understand. You don't have to have the certainty. You don't even have to have the curiosity. Let's embody the moment of wonder and sit in the silence. And in that moment, we might know God's presence. We might perceive the order, the beauty, and the freedom that is awaiting us. When we sit and we commune in that presence as the one, with the one. She cautions against going too far into metaphysics and just invites us to rest quietly in that capital R reality, to rest in that presence, to pause there, because that's where transformation becomes available. She describes life's purpose as expressing the creation of God, and says that living here and now can be recognized as beautiful and purposeful. We do not have to explain reality before we can enter into relationship with it. How wonderful is that? when Patty spoke a few weeks ago, she shared a poem, and that inspired me to think about this experience that I'm inviting all of us to move into, this practice of wonder, which might lead to the emotion of awe. And this is The Summer Day. You'll know the end of it if you don't know the whole thing. By Mary Oliver, beloved poet. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? This grasshopper. I mean, the one who has flung herself out of the grass, the one who is eating sugar out of my hand, who is moving her jaws back and forth instead of up and down, who is gazing around with her enormous and complicated eyes. Now she lifts up her pale forearms and thoroughly washes her face. Now she snaps her wings open and floats away. I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel down in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I've been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me. What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? I love how Mary attends to the grasshopper in detail rather than remaining in a category of grasshopper. I love how she admits, I don't really know what prayer is. And that becomes spacious, but not threatening. I love that she says, I know how to pay attention. I love that she falls and kneels in the grass. And how that attention resembles prayer in so many different cultures in the world, so many faith traditions. And I am struck how mortality enters the poem because attention matters, because what we are noticing is fleeting. And suddenly that song that you know because Victor Tynes sang it and even did the horn solo. And yet that was so fleeting a moment. But in that moment, I experienced awe. We think we have to be certain about things in our humanity, and what I know is that not knowing does not have to close us down. Sometimes not knowing is the space in which wonder becomes possible. And that transformation becomes possible. We started this talk with the ideas around wonder and God hearing of the pain and the suffering of the world. And that reminded me of the words and the presence of Rabbi Abraham Joshua Herschel. He's a mystic 20th century religious intellectual, a social change agent. And he is immortalized in a famous photograph taken in the Selma to Montgomery Civil Rights March. He, according to Krista Tippett on Being, she says that he is a conspicuous bearded figure looking every bit the Hebrew patriarch in the front of the line of leaders surrounding Martin Luther King Jr. And Herschel said later in words that become famous, "I feel like my legs were praying." To continue Krista Tippett's words, his poetic theological writings are still read and widely studied today. His faith was much more about radical amazement than it was about certainty. As instructive for us now is the way Herschel embodied the passionate social engagement of the prophets, drawing on wisdom at once provocative and nourishing. In a free society, he said, some are guilty, but all are responsible. And he also said, the opposite of good is not evil, but indifference. I love these words from him. I would say about individuals, an individual dies when he ceases to be surprised. I am surprised every morning that I see the sunshine again. When I see an act of evil, I am not accommodated. I don't accommodate myself to the violence that goes on everywhere. I'm still surprised. I'm still surprised. That's why I'm against it, why I can hope against it. We must learn how to be surprised and not adjust ourselves. I am the most maladjusted person in society. I think that whole explanation, I think that tells why wonder has shown up for me, because we can't be indifferent to what's happening in the world. Because while there are some people who are guilty of atrocities that we cannot fathom, we must be surprised by them so that we can take action against them, because some are guilty, but all are responsible. Wonder as a spiritual practice refuses to become numb, refuses to become numb to beauty, to suffering, to one another, and to the presence of God. Wonder before beauty asks, how extraordinary that this exists. Wonder before suffering asks, how have we come to accept that this must exist? So, a spiritual practice of wonder. Herschel was convinced that whatever age a person is, that they have a soul, that they have a spirit, that they have a heart, that they have a mind, and that they must use them. We each have an experience that we must draw on, and that we have challenges to pose, and we must pose them. And everyone, whether you agree with everything about them or not, everyone has a learning. And we have to be in wonder and allow them to teach us. That's especially true of young people, but I think it's true of everyone. He saw it in young people, and he went out and he spoke to young people and he listened to them because he knew that they had something to teach him. How can we stand in wonder, and how can we approach everyone as we apply this idea that wonder as a practice has room in our lives? And so I want to invite you to stand in this question. When there is certainty and when maybe there is some curiosity, but to step into wonder and to ask, what if I don't know everything there is to know about you? What if I don't know? And it's easy to see that in places where we think we're not in community with others, but also it's a danger in a place that is a community, even a place that is as spiritually enlightened as we are here, right? Because how many of us have thought in the back of our mind, well, I know how he is. I know what she's going to say. You ever done that? Maybe. Those thoughts, those statements, those beliefs and ideas, those attitudes show up, and what they do is they close us down to a fresh encounter. They close us down from being able to see the seeds of possibility of what could be. What if I don't know everything there is to know about you? Moses taught us that we must be aware and that we should stop and turn aside and bring our attention. Jesus tells us to look and to consider. Myrtle says, get out of your head and just rest in the presence of the capital R reality, that you are one with the one, and become available to transformation. Mary Oliver says, pay attention. Pay attention so that you get down on your knees when you encounter a feather and experience the wonder of that feather. Get down on your knees on the beach and look at that incredible, ugly oyster shell that makes beautiful pearls. Get down on your knees and look at the beautiful rocks that exist in the world, and that these are millions of years old. And what have they experienced? And Rabbi Heschel says, do not become adjusted, do not become numb. Certainty demands an explanation. Curiosity seeks an intellectual understanding. Wonder allows the possibility of transformation. Wonder does not change us because we might see the world differently. It's that after we see it, we may no longer be willing to live in the same way. So in addition to asking, what if I don't know everything I think there is to know about you? What if our invitation, right, becomes this week for us to pause and look for beauty in the majestic and in the mundane? Make it a spiritual practice to once each day deliberately turn aside towards something you would normally pass without noticing. Don't immediately photograph it and upload it to your Instagram reel. You don't have to name it. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to turn it into a lesson. Just be present and pay attention. You know, in my mind, I want to say, you pour that first cup of coffee and pause and enjoy the steam rising from it. But at this, right now, the air is hotter than the coffee, so that's not happening. You have to wait till it gets cold for that. But be present to the mundane. Pause and when you're in the shower and watch how the water bounces off your toes. Watch and see how the clouds get cut and disappear as they drift behind your roofline. Watch the patterns that the squirrels run in as they're chasing each other through your yard. What becomes visible when I give this moment my full attention? For those of you that are at home, that felt especially important because there was a siren underlining what I just said. What happens when you give this moment your full attention? Certainty demands to know why. Curiosity seeks to understand, and wonder makes us available for transformation. And it's not enough to know the truth without putting that truth into action in our lives. So let's practice. If you're willing and it's comfortable, I invite you to soften your gaze or close your eyes, to place your feet flat on the ground. Find a comfortable position for your hands. And become aware of your breath. And as you settle fully into your physical body, I invite you to notice one ordinary sensation. Is it the weight of your shirt as you inhale? Is it the firmness of the floor beneath your feet? Is it the softness of the fabric of your socks? Perhaps you feel the slight breeze from the air conditioning or the fan that you have on. Is it the sound of a siren or a car horn? Or the breathing of someone behind you? God is here in this moment. Turn aside and see. Fully present to the physical experience. Bring your attention and your awareness to that faculty of imagination and that incredible movie screen in your consciousness. Call up a familiar face, a familiar place, or maybe even a routine that seems mundane in this moment. And with that inner voice, ask, what have I assumed I already know? What have I assumed I already know? And as we contemplate that question, what have I assumed I already know? Don't force an answer, just rest. And a spiritual practice in community, we rest in the stillness and in the silence. What have I assumed I already know? A sense of wonder opens the possibility of transformation. We give thanks to the Spirit of life and love, of wisdom, we gather in awe at the extraordinary experience of being alive. And Holy Presence, we pray that our attention our attention and our intention recognize that the ground on which we stand is you, is holy, and that in this practice of becoming, we are joy. And so it is, and so we let it be. Amen. And thank you, friends, for letting me share today. I love you.
Well, thank you, Rev Todd, for your amazing message, as always. I always learn something from you, always. I'm going to sing, this is one of mine. It's called Blossoming Into Me. Awakening to the wonder of life, body, mind, and heart, every part making peace with uncertainty. Uncertainty, let the good be revealed. Awakening to the mystery, blossoming into me, blossoming into me, softening to the wonder of life, body, mind, and heart, every part embracing uncertainty, uncertainty, let the good be revealed, softening to the mystery, blossoming into me, blossoming into me. Opening to the wonder of life, body, mind, and heart, every part finding joy in uncertainty, uncertainty, let the good be revealed, opening to the mystery, blossoming into me, blossoming into me.